mood today with these silly gremlins, but hopefully this works. It's sort of quite sporadic. It might have something to do with all the vegetation that's surrounding us in this drainage line. And we're also limited to where we can move around for the moment, as I've only just heard guests walking along the walkway back towards the camp. So hopefully they would have seen this leopard and all got excited and decided to skip tea and coffee and come straight out and join us, and then hopefully we can get a different view too. But he's a beautiful cat though. He's obviously stopped dragging the carcass and he's now just laying down, chomping on that bushbuck, having a little feed. At one point he was staring up at a tree and I thought he might take it up a jackalberry. And I think he will. I don't think he's going to leave it on the ground for too long. Chomping away quite nicely now. And, I mean, there was a fair amount of flesh still left on this bushbuck, so I think he's definitely going to feed on it for most of the day. Perhaps he'll finish it up this afternoon, or maybe he's hungry enough that he'll gobble it all up now. But First Lady, you've asked about the success rate of leopards in the wild. Unfortunately, it's not particularly good, and your question was referring to leopard cubs. And as we've unfortunately seen over the last few years, and most guides in the Sabi Sand, you know, the heart of the leopards in South Africa, is we don't see many of them making it past 6 months if they're lucky. I mean, if they can get to about 2 years old, they've got a relatively good chance of carrying on, but life often it just gets harder and harder, particularly for a young male leopard, or I suppose for a young female leopard too, as both sexes mark and defend territories. So the boys will go out. They'll normally have to disperse quite far away from home, although, examples, look at Quarantine. He didn't have to go very far. There's a gap on sort of eastern section, southeastern corner of Cheetah Plains, and he's quite happily taken that up. Hosanna seems to be lingering around. You better be careful, though, especially with Hukumuri. Tingana seems to be acting like a gentleman, but that's going to not last for too long before he becomes less and less tolerant with Hosanna and chases him off. So I don't know where they're going to go up. And the same thing goes for girls. I mean, typically the female leopards, as we know, will open up a space for their youngsters if they are females and live within their territory. They might shift out slightly in order to accommodate their daughters. But look at the whole Karula scenario. I mean, it was very sad with her disappearance. And you saw how many leopards were fighting over that spot. Tandi came in, Shadow came in, Shongile thought it was hers, but no. There was a bit of conflict that happened there. So it's really, really tough for these cats to make it to adulthood, unfortunately. Now, Gordon, you're wondering what the purpose of a dewlap is. So lots of different animals have dewlaps. It's well, one of the main functions is that it's extra skin around the neck, so it actually helps sort of protect them. So you can imagine when cats fight, and particularly with leopards, lions have got big manes to protect their throats. So that helps. Leopards will obviously try and go for one another's neck, because the idea when they have a bit of a fight, when it gets to that, normally they'll snarl and hiss at one another, and sometimes disagreements can be solved just by snarling and growling and you know, soaring and territorial markings. You might find one becomes submissive, one moves up, but when it does end up being an altercation, then they're going to fight to the death, essentially. And that extra skin around the neck is definitely going to be... Oh, sorry, that's a game drive there. I'm just going to quickly jump onto the radio to tell Taxon what's actually going on here. Sorry, everybody, I'll get back to that. Okay. Well, let me have a chat to, well, I suppose, Taxon, and let him know that there's a leopard in front of his lodge. It's good to hear his voice. I'm going to send you across to Steve in the meantime and see where he is.